We're live. What is up, everybody?
What's up, man?
We got Jared with us. We actually just came off a stream from his channel, and we did that like maybe 2 minutes ago. So right now we're thinking we might continue this. So we did a few minutes on his channel. We just talked a little bit. Now we're doing a few minutes on mine. If you guys like that, make sure you comment down below because that's something we're thinking about because we want to start live streaming a lot more often. But if you go watch his, we kind of talked about what baits like we need to get better at or like how to fish baits that we don't really know. We just kind of talked in general about that. But for this live stream, I actually want to ask Jared a question since he knows a little more than I do. And I want to ask him and talk about what rods I should buy. So, for example, if you don't know, if you're like really, really beginner, rods have different, I guess, strengths you would call it, and the tips of the rods have different actions. And practically, you get certain rods for certain things. So you wouldn't want to fish, a 12-inch swim bait that weighs half a pound on an ultralight rod. That's just not practical. So
Right.
I'm going to explain to Jared what I already have and how I set it up and see if he thinks if he likes what I'm already doing, and then see if he thinks what rod I should get. Because I'm kind of thinking about getting a new one, but I don't know if I want to spend the money or not.
Hey, there you go. That's what I'm talking about.
Can you ever go wrong buying a rod, Jared?
I don't know, man. It's hard to go wrong buying a rod. I've had a few rods break recently, but I need to get a couple new rods myself. I need to get a new spinning rod, man. I broke a bait casting rod, but my spinning rod, my spinning rods, they're lacking right now. I mean, I'm down to two, so.
Yeah, that's all I really have. I only really have two, but your bait casters, I guess, are almost a lot more practical. You
Yeah.
get a lot more use out of them. The only time you really need to spinning is, one or two finesse things, and then creek fishing, I guess.
Right. Okay, so let's hear about your rods. Let's hear what you got going on.
Okay, so I don't know if you watched my video the other day or not, but I've got this like little series going on, and I'm going to do one more with River, but I titled it like how to rig up your rods for fishing season, and I have a lake edition and a creek edition out. And I
Okay.
kind of already explained this, but right now I'm currently running. It's I believe it's a 7-1-1 blues, right? Reel on a Veritas. It's just a 7-foot medium heavy, and on
Okay.
that I'll just do like any like little worms or anything like that you throw with the bait caster. It's more on the finesse side, I guess to say.
Mhm.
And then I have it's a slower reel. It's like an old one. It's not really a good bait caster. It's like 6'6", and I believe it's a medium heavy as well. And the reel on it, I think it's 6-3-1, and
Okay.
it's like a $60 combo. And I'll throw like a crankbait or jerk bait, something on it. And then I have okay, take that back. So my 7-foot medium heavy rod,
Yeah.
I use that one for topwater with a 8-3-1 Johnny Morse reel, and
Okay.
I've got braid on it.
All right.
But I have a 7-foot heavy that I'll fish like jigs or swim baits on
Okay.
with the 7-1-1 reel.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, that's fine.
How, okay,
I
so
mean,
go ahead.
okay. Honestly, you'd be better off swapping your reels. So, listen, this is just being kind of nitpicky. Like, it's probably not even worth switching them. But so with a top water, right? You're okay. Depends what kind of top water you're using. If you're using like a whopper plopper, you're just reeling that thing straight in, right?
Right.
So it doesn't really matter how fast gear ratio reel you're using. It does matter when you're fishing like buzz baits because you need to get them up to the top quick. It does matter when you're fishing spooks and stuff like that and poppers because you're reeling up slack. But you're not reeling up much slack. You're just kind of reeling like just a quarter of a turn or eighth of a turn or so. Probably with that 8.3 to 1, probably just like a quarter of a turn, and it's already like time to twitch it again. Well, you could switch them up because, like I said, it's not going to make much of a difference, but just because both of those are already really high speed reels. But if you switch them up, put the 8 3-to-1 on the 7-foot heavy rod for like Texas rigs and jigs. That'll probably help you a little bit, I guess, because that just helps you reel in slack faster. Because, I mean, 7-to-1, like I said, it's already fast, but you'll reel in slack a little bit faster with that 8 to 3-to-1 on that. Because you're reeling, basically the reasoning for that is you're reeling up a lot more slack when you're fishing a jig than you are with a topwater. You're more constantly reeling on a topwater than you are with a jig. You're reeling up slack real quick, and then you're stopping reeling, and then you're just using your rod to drag the bait. But I mean, it really doesn't matter. The reason why I say it doesn't really matter is because like I use a 7.3-to-1 for my jigs and my topwater, for my jigs and my Texas rigs too. I have 2 separate rods for those. Like I have one rod that's just dedicated for Texas rigs, and I have one rod that is just dedicated for jigs. And my jig rod is a 7.4 heavy with a 7 3-to-1 reel, and then my Texas rig rod is a 7'2" medium heavy, but it kind of acts more like a heavy, and that has a 7.3-to-1 gear ratio reel too.
All right. And just real quick, yeah, Clay, this will be published after this. I'll add a thumbnail to it probably sometime either tonight or tomorrow. But as soon as we're finished, it'll kind of like it just goes straight up pretty much. It'll be uploaded to YouTube, so you can watch it anytime after that. But explain to me then, so at one point in time, I'm sure if you're watching this, the chance of you knowing who the Guggen Squad are is pretty good. But I used to like watch them like crazy. I know you did too. Way back, like I guess end of high school, beginning of college. I know we both used to like we got really heavy into them. But when I was watching all that, I used to know like what all the rod tips meant and everything, and exactly what rod or what lures you would use them for. But now I can't even remember like what fast or moderate action or any of that is. Explain that to me real quick.
Okay.
Learn me, Dad.
Hold up a second. I'm gonna mute myself for just a second, and I'm gonna grab a rod and I'm gonna show you. All right.
All right.
Let me mute myself.
All right. I don't know what rod he's grabbing, guys, but hopefully it's a cool one. I don't know. Jared knows a lot more than I do, so. Also, make sure you check out everything in the description. Quick plug, especially our Take Someone Fishing stuff, because that's something we've really been trying to start and get going recently. And we just really want to promote that because why not? I mean, that's what we love. We love the outdoors. We love being out there. And we also love taking people out there because the experience is so good. So why not? Go check that out. Back to Jared. I can see him, but he's still muted right now.
All right, I was talking. Anyway, I'm glad you said I was muted. I was going to keep going. So we got a rod here, right? 7 foot, medium heavy. Actually, broke the tip on this one, so it's like a 6'11" medium heavy. It barely broke. Actually, I didn't break the tip. I just had to replace the tip. Hold up a second. This is not.
You're about to break it again.
Yeah, I know. All right, so this is the tip, right? Okay.
Right.
If it's a fast action, that means that the tip like just bends at like the first third of the rod, right? So just this part, like in between where I'm holding, that is the part of the rod that bends. That's a fast taper or a fast tip, fast action. That's what that means. Okay. But so like a medium, heavy, and heavy. Wait, let me explain the rest of the tip actions too. So a moderate action, or let's go in descending order. So first of all, you have the extra fast. The extra fast would just be like this part of the rod bending. And then you have the fast action, which is this rod. You can tell it kind of stops. The backbone sort of kicks in after the first third of the rod, like right in here somewhere, or even right up here. You see how the backbone just starts kicking in? Anyway, this is a fast action rod. And then you have a moderate fast, which bends even more. And then you have a moderate, and then you have a slow. and then the slows, like the whole rod loads up essentially. But a fast action helps a lot, and most graphite rods are going to be fast or moderate or extra fast or moderate fast. Anyway, what I'm saying is basically that's good because you can feel bites really well with the tip, but then whenever you need to hammer it on them, you have a lot of backbone there too. That way you're not just loading your rod up essentially, because that's not going to drive the hook in them by just loading your rod up. So you need that backbone in order to drive like a single hooked bait. So like a a Texas rig, a jig, a spinner bait, a chatter bait, stuff like that. I use fast action rods for all of those. But if you're using a treble hooked bait, sometimes that fast action can be so it can be bad because that backbone hits that fish too hard, and those hooks are so thin that it can either rip them out of their mouth, it can pull the bait out of their mouth, or it'll just rip a hole basically in their mouth that's so big that it'll make those small little hooks pull out. Whereas if it's got like a moderate or a slower action to it, or a moderate fast action, more of the rod bends. So whenever you set the hook with that crankbait, those hooks are sticking in their mouth a lot better, and you're not you're just kind of sweeping it into them. You're not that whole rod's loading up to kind of absorb your hook set. Whereas with a fast action, basically you're going to have a lot of backbone. It's kind of like pulling with like a stick. I mean, if you just have like a broomstick and you have a rope tied to it and you pull somebody with it, like you can pull them really hard. But if you have something that's really, really bendy and flexible, like a rubber something, like a rubber pole or something, that's going to bend, it's not going to pull them as hard.
So what would you want to use like really slow on?
Really
like
slow.
Like a catfish live bait type deal, kind of?
Oh, dude, I don't really know for live bait. I would say, oh gosh, I don't know.
Because I mean, I was just thinking when you think I went catfishing recently just to add, and like, you just think about stuff like that, and the rods seem to bend. I guess I don't know. They just seem a lot more stretchy, kind of like you said, more like a rubber pole.
Probably because he was using glass rods and a lot of so glass rods you can't really feel as good with them, like feel your bait on the bottom is good, but you can I don't know how to explain it. So you can't feel your bait is good on the bottom, and at the it's like a really, really bendy rod. Glass rods usually are. They even make some hybrid rods that are like graphite and glass. But glass rods are mainly for like crankbaits, and then a lot of live baits are glass rods too, or catfishing rods or glass rods too. I'm not really sure why, but I think it has something to do with the sheer weight of the fish, right? So a fast action rod. So you got to think about it this way too. Like a fast action or an extra fast action rod is going to be a lot easier to break. You see what I'm saying? Because
Right.
it's only bending in that first third, or it's only bending in that first fifth if it's like an extra fast. So it's going to be a lot easier to break that because it's mostly just like a straight stick. But then a glass rod is like a bendy stick. So the weight of those catfish, you probably don't want to have a stick that doesn't bend much. You want one that loads up really well in order to just pull that fish in.
So do you think the ones I have now, or I mean, you kind of said earlier, but you think they're pretty much good for what I'm using them for?
Yeah. I mean, so fast
What would you
action.
add? What would you add? I guess is my question. If I was to buy another one,
If you were to buy
should I
another one,
just replace because the one I have, the one I said's not really that good. It's probably, I don't know, 5 to 10 years old, and it's like a Bill Dance Quantum $60 combo from Bass Pro that I bought when I was like with Christmas money one year when I was 12, and it was my first bait caster.
So what? So you have both of your rods are 7 foot long, right?
Right. I believe the heavy one might be 7.2, but I'm like 90% sure it's 7 foot.
Okay, 7 foot heavy rod is like a broomstick. Like that's a heavy rod, but
Yeah.
it's heavy for its length. I would either go. bigger. So I would so here's an option. You could switch your rods up. You could get a 7'6" flipping stick or a 7'4" heavy flipping stick to like flip jigs with, like a new jig rod, and then you could take that 7 foot heavy and fish Texas rigs on it, because it doesn't really matter. Like a difference between a medium heavy and a heavy for Texas rigs, it really doesn't matter. It's more just about personal preference. Um, I actually kind of like to use a heavy for Texas rigs, and some people will say medium heavy. Some people even use extra heavy. So just all is about personal preference with like Texas rigs. So you could switch that one to your Texas rig rod, which would make a little bit more sense because it's a shorter rod, and you're not going to be doing as much flipping. You're doing more of kind of like short casts and stuff. So, and that's going to be a little bit more accurate where it's a shorter rod. And then what you could do is then take that other rod. So you would have your biggest rod, the new rod you got could be for like just jigs. And then the second rod could be for like Texas rigs, spinner baits, like that heavy rod. You can use that for Texas rigs, spinner baits, and moving baits, like single hooked moving baits. And then I would use that smaller rod for things like top waters, even small crankbaits. Like you can still use a fast action for crankbaits. I do it all the time. But it's just a moderate is more optimal, I guess. You just kind of got to be careful. So one way to kind of combat it, like so say you just have a fast action rod. People don't think about this, but I think it's genius. Whenever you have a fast action rod but you want to fish crankbaits on it, one option is to just put monofilament on that rod because it has so much stretch. It absorbs, it basically does the same thing that your rod does whenever it loads up like that. It keeps you from ripping a huge hole in their mouth because you have less or you have more stretch in your line. It basically does the same exact thing your rod does when it loads up. But yeah, so you could fish basically that 7 foot heavy rod could be kind of your all-purpose rod. And then like your single hooked moving baits and single hooked Texas rigs and stuff. But then your smallest rod, you could use that for top waters and like treble hooked baits, like jerk baits and crankbaits. Or you could just get a smaller rod, like a 6'6" or so, and then fish like small crankbaits and jerk baits on it.
Yeah, I do need to get better with the crankbaits and jerkbaits like we just talked about in your video. But what reel? When does I guess gear ratio matter?
So I don't know. It all depends on your personal.
Like, you kind of talked about that a second ago, I guess.
I think that's personal preference too. I like a 6, like something in the 6s. I like that for moving baits. So this rod that I'm holding right now, it has a swim bait on it. So a swim bait is a bait that if you move it too fast, it'll stay too high in the water column and you won't catch nearly as many fish. So I fish it on some kind of 6 something to 1 gear ratio reel in the 6s. And the reason why I do that is to just kind of slow myself down. You can use an 8-3 to 1 if you have enough mental strength to really just slowly grind that reel handle, because you're going to pick up a lot of line with that 8-3 to 1. But with the 6-3 to 1, I can reel this a little bit faster and I can get ahead of myself without that bait moving really too fast. But with that being said, I also have a spinner bait rod that's pretty identical to this. And I have a 6-3 to 1 gear ratio reel on that too. And that just helps me slow down when I'm using like spinner baits, chatterbaits, crankbaits, swim baits, stuff like that. Now, anything that you're working with the rod, I want a 7 foot heavy or higher, or not 7 foot heavy, a 7-1 to gear ratio reel or higher, because I just feel like the 6s are so much slower than, like, it's kind of a big difference. Like, it's not that big of a difference, but it's a pretty big difference. Like, it slows me down a lot whenever I'm using this, but it also helps me a lot to use a higher gear ratio reel whenever I'm working anything with the rod. So that could be a jerk bait. You work that bait with the rod because you're twitching it in. It could be a spook. You work that bait with the rod and you reel in line. It could be a Texas rig. It could be a jig. Basically, almost every bait you work with a rod except for your moving baits, and that's what you're going to use that slower gear ratio for. But if you really have like huge deep diving crankbaits that you just need to put a lot of power behind them, then that's when you want like a 5. But I haven't really found a need to buy one, so I don't have any. I have like 2 6s and like 4 7s. I don't have
Well,
any
if you
8s.
don't need one, I definitely don't need one. But we're kind of getting, I think we might have already hit 20 minutes.
That's all
But we've
right.
been talking about rods for 18. Yeah, it's all right. But Turtle Maniac, he just said he was a bit late. We're just talking about like rods in general. This video is just basically Jared, or I was asking Jared about what rods he thinks I should buy and about how the different actions and backbones that rods have and like what's the best baits to fish on them. But this will be published right after that in case you want to go back and watch it. And then Jared, Byron Little, you probably saw that, but he said you need to start a guide service.
Me?
I doubt he was talking about me. You're the one that's talking the whole time, knows everything.
Oh man, dude, I don't need to start a guide service. I actually have a buddy who has a guide service, Matt Riley. Look him up. He's a really great guy. He was actually my RA whenever I was a freshman here at Emory, and he's just an incredible guy. Like he fishes all the time for trout, muskie, and smallmouth, and he will put you on some fish. I promise. Like he's a really good fisherman, and he focuses on fly fishing. He does a lot of writing for magazines and stuff. He's just a great guy. So look up Matt Riley fly fishing or Matt Riley guide service or something like that. But he'll take you on his raft and put you on some fish if you need a guide.
Well,
And that being said, he fishes most of the same places that I do. So go hit him up and say that I sent you. Say that I sent you.
Oh, there you have it. Everybody go check him out. And then also comment down below what you thought about this because like we've said multiple times, we're thinking about doing this, I guess, every week back and forth. And even if you say you don't like it, we're probably going to just because it's fun. And it's a great way to get content to you guys. But let us know what kind of rods you guys use and everything. But I think that's pretty much going to wrap this up. Jared kind of explained rod tips. Is there anything else you have to say?
No, man, I think that's pretty much it. I hope you guys enjoyed this live stream. And I'm just excited to do more in the future. I think it's going to be a great time, and I think it really is a great way for us to learn a lot more about our audience and for our audience to learn a lot more about us.
Well, everybody go sub to Jared for that. No.
Thanks,
seriously,
bro.
Main thing, please comment down below. You don't have to worry about anything else. Just comment and let us know what you guys think about these things. But I think that's going to do it for this video. Again, thank you, Jared, for tuning in and teaching us about this. But I think we're going to sign off for right now. And as always, make sure you guys go out and make sure you take someone fishing.
Comment below.
Peace.